Are you ready? Ready to bring a revolution to your relationships? Ready for the experiences on your dating adventure to evolve? Ready for more passion, intimacy, connection, and love in your relationship? Ready to heal past relationship wounds? You're in the right place. I'm Alan, the love engineer, and this is the Relationship Revolutions podcast. In this series, you'll get guidance and tips from me, interviews from other relationship experts, insights from couples who already have a great relationship, and other mind-opening conversations.
So, welcome to the latest episode of Relationship Revolutions, where this week I am joined by Christy Holt. And first two questions, Christy, how are you and where are you?
Thanks, Alan. I'm in Canada. I am in Edmonton, Alberta. It's really, really cold here. I guess to an extent that's part of how I am, is I'm cold right now. And I am also really grateful. I have had a few exciting things happen in the last 12 weeks, so I'm really celebrating.
Excellent. So what has been happening?
A few things. Number one, yesterday, big celebration for me. I wrapped up the group program that I've been hosting over the last 6 months. And so as with anything that has come to an end, it's also a new beginning. And so a lot of celebration as we reflected back on our journey together over the last 6 months. And it's interesting because a lot of times we think that as the leader or the mentor or the facilitator of a program, that we're all about the giving. I have to say that I learn so much from my clients, and it's such an absolute gift to be able to journey through life with them. So it wasn't just a celebration that they were graduating from the program. It was a celebration of all of us and our growth over the last 6 months together. So that was super fun. And then also, I recently published my latest book last week, and called Love Unstuck. And so I'm really excited to get this message out there. Ultimately, it's about creating healthy, happy relationships and a lot of really practical action steps that you can take to improve your relationships. Now, I want to throw a spoiler alert right at the front. The most important relationship that you have is the one you have with yourself. So while it is a book about relationships, it is largely focused on building that foundation within yourself so that you can relate to other people with much more grace and ease.
It's awesome, though there's also a part of me that's screaming, saying, oh. And the reason for that is my second book, which I haven't actually published yet, I was going to call it Winning the Game of Love, and then I didn't really like that title too much, so I brainstormed, so I came up with another title that would be more suitable, and I came up with Love Unstuck, so now I've got to come up with another name for it.
Well, I'm sorry I beat you to that one. It's a great name. I loved it. My original thought, my first book was called Unstuck for Women. So ultimately, that book was about getting out of the spiral, right, of overwhelm and overthinking. So that was a very specific area. And then I kind of wanted to continue the theme because the unstuck really, it resonated with me. And so I kind of wanted to continue that theme. And so I was going to call it, Unstuck for Relationships or something of that nature. And then into my brain came Love Unstuck. And I kind of sampled it with a couple people and they were like, oh my God, I love it. And I was like, right, me too. So it stuck. I don't know, is that ironic? But, there's room for more than one book with the same title, I suppose. So,
We'll see.
Yeah.
So, next question, and it's something that I ask a lot of coaches and therapists that come on here. And when I think back to when I was leaving school and going through all the careers office interviews as to what to do when you leave school, relationship coach or life coach and those kind of things were never an option. Maybe they are in Canada, I don't know. But how do you get to be the happiness hussy, as you call yourself?
Well, that's two different stories. So let me start with the happiness hussy story, and then we can circle back to the other piece of that. As far as the happiness hussy goes, it kind of happened by accident. I had been calling myself a happiness coach prior to this change. it wasn't as interesting. I don't know if people really knew what that meant, but they also weren't terribly inspired to ask me, what is a happiness coach? And so when my cousin called me a happiness hussy, in joking, and I'll back up to that story in just a second, I knew it was the one, because it had a lot more intrigue and it actually had a little bit more punch, because obviously you can tell I'm a bit of a punchy person. So I was like, this is the one. So how it came about was aunt had stopped by and she mentioned something about, oh, I see you online. And I was like, oh, I hope you were, inspired by something that I wrote online. And kind of looked me up and down and was like, mm-hmm. So I was relaying this story. This is not an aunt that I really know. She is part of an extended family that I was never really part of, just biological family. I was kind of joking around with my cousin. I was like, I don't think she was very inspired, right? Like, just her response was very lackluster. And my cousin was like, oh, you happiness hussy, you. And I was like, oh my God, I am taking that to the fucking bank, because yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you for, dawning me with this new, far more interesting and far more applicable title. So that's where the happiness hussy came from. As far as, becoming a relationship coach, it came about very organically. If you look back to, my life prior, I'm a piano teacher. I have a business degree. I used to practice as a professional accountant. And then I became a fitness and nutrition coach, did some personal training, some nutrition coaching, and some group fitness instruction. And then the pandemic hit. And all the fitness things ceased to be available for quite some time, like a ridiculous amount of time. And so in that period of time, I pivoted a little bit. I moved my fitness business online, which started off good, and then it kind of waned as people got really tired of being at home. And my sort of like foundation of all of nutrition and health coaching and fitness coaching was really a shift in mindset, because I really truly believe that if we look at things with the right perspective, that's where the miracle is. The miracle is in the perspective shift. And so I had been already coaching my clients' mindset, but I decided to take it up a notch, because I was like, you know what, this is actually really important, right? Like, as far as health coaching goes, I just thought, if you feel better, we'll do better. And so how do we get to feeling better? Well, that's a choice. That's a decision. We take action that makes us feel better. And most of the time, the diet culture has taught us that we're not good enough, right? That there's something wrong with us and we need to go on this endless journey of healing and fixing, and call bullshit on all of that. I actually believe that we're already whole. And we can start to operate from this state of our wholeness, which is unconditional love. It's peace, it's joy, it's happiness. If we can operate from this, our life will go much more smoothly. And how do we get there? Because it seems insurmountable when you're not there. You're stuck in survival mode and you're just getting by. It seems an impossibility. Set upon finding the way to get there. And it started with my health coaching clients. Started by, it's like one really small thing you can do to make yourself feel better right now. Like, what's one loving thing that you can do to nurture yourself? Maybe it's just a walk around the block. Maybe it's, adding, I don't know anybody gets real jazzed about squats, but if we're talking about your end goal is to feel better in your body, like, what's one small thing you can do? Start there, right? A lot of people are like, oh, join a CrossFit gym and go 6 days a week. No, you're not going to stick to that. That's such a radical shift in your identity that it's not going to be maintainable. Yeah. The key is these baby steps, right? Taking small incremental steps and building on them. But you feel really good and you feel motivated then to maybe expand that. And maybe your walk becomes not around the block, but around 2 blocks. Maybe around the neighborhood, maybe a little further and further. And the better you feel, the better choices you make. So that's, in a nutshell, sort of where a lot of that came from. And as over time, I continue to evolve. And my relationship continued to evolve. Having been through a couple of not great relationships myself, I knew what was possible. And I really just wanted to show people who were stuck, who were struggling, who were in, unhealthy, unhappy relationships, what's possible, and help them to get it.
Yeah. So when you were in those unhealthy relationships, if somebody had said to you at that time, this is the relationship that you can have, this is what you deserve, would you believe them?
Well, I'll tell you what, Alan. I had some friends, and they were more acquaintances, but we were Facebook friends, and I knew them in real life too. But I observed them more on Facebook at the time. And while I was in my very unhappy marriage, I witnessed them being so freaking lovey-dovey on Facebook that I was like, these guys are full of shit. I literally was like, no, you can't be real. Like this is not, I don't believe you. I reflect back and I'm kind of like one of those people. I can't even help it because I do want to show people what's possible. And I was actually just having a conversation with someone this morning. I was thinking like, the fact that they are still in my mind, in my conscious floating around as something means that they were actually really instrumental. And I didn't think it at the time. I thought they were full of shit at the time. Now I can see that in some way they probably did inspire me to say, maybe that is possible for me. But no, you're absolutely right. I thought they were full of shit. I was like, that's not going to happen. And, I was seeing a therapist around the time I was really struggling in my relationship. My ex and I were supposed to see her as a couples therapist. One day he just didn't show up. And so relationship changed. She became my therapist. And I remember very specifically, she was trying to get me to create a list of what a relationship would ideally look like for me. And I was on the struggle bus. I could tell her what I did not like, what I did not want, what I was sick of tolerating, and everything on the no-no list. I was really struggling to flip it around and come up with, well, what would it look like? There were a few pieces at play there because one level of me thought that if I actually expressed these things when I firmly did not believe it was possible within my current relationship, that I would be signing the death warrant on my marriage by saying I want these things. I didn't think it was possible in that situation. Secondly, there were some self-worth issues at play because I wasn't sure I deserved that or that I could have it for myself. And luckily, my therapist helped me to reframe them, helped convince me like it's okay to want these things even if you don't have them today, if they're not in this relationship. Like it's okay just to want things, right? And that was a big hang up for me. So I'll have this list in my phone. Ultimately, this description of this ideal relationship was a list of how I would experience connection, things that I wanted to feel when I was with someone else. And I am happy to report back that honestly, about a hot minute after my split with my ex, the universe fully delivered. And I've now been together with my current partner for over 6 years. It's really been the easiest relationship where we don't fight. We don't always agree. That would not be human for two people to see everything the same. We have never had a fight. We've never had an argument. We've had discussions where we share our maybe, differing viewpoints, but just get each other. We allow each other to be who we are, and it's been absolutely magical. So first step, I think, in all of this is figuring out what you really want. That's kind of the moral of that little story.
Yeah, because I think so many of us, if you had a healthy relationship model growing up, you look at that and think, oh, that's how relationships are.
Right.
But a lot of the time as kids, we think our parents have a great relationship, but they don't because they hide so much from the kids.
Often we don't have great models. And how are we supposed to create what we don't actually know or believe exists for us, right? And there's a level of knowing maybe that something exists, not like me thinking, oh, they're bullshit. Knowing it exists is one thing, and then believing you can have it and create it for yourself is another level.
And then with having so many more people growing up with separated parents or only having one parent, you've got no model there at all in any way, shape or form. So, and they don't teach this stuff at school.
Really don't. And they
you
should.
Don't learn it at home. So it's no surprise that people's relationships are in a mess, but it's an area of life that people don't want to talk about.
There's a lot of subjects that we don't talk about that are actually incredibly important, right? We generally are told not to talk about sex or politics or money. And those are
religion.
all actually religion. incredibly important things to talk about. I'm not saying you should go up to your neighbor in the street and have a deep conversation about politics, although, hey, why not? But we had a few more of these vulnerable conversations. We could avoid a lot of issues by just bringing the thing out into the open. There's not remotely as much shame when we bring these things out into the open as there is when it's kind of a secret topic that we're supposed to talk about. Like, it's so taboo to have conversations about sex or money or religion or politics or all of these things. You may notice a lot of those taboo subjects are actually areas where relationships struggle as well, right? Because we're not being vulnerable, we're not being intimate, we're not communicating, we're not being authentically ourselves, we're avoiding the uncomfortable, which is very human. Like, it's very human.
It is, and it's also very, very conditioned. Why is it not comfortable to talk about this stuff? Because our parents didn't talk about it.
I will talk about anything and everything. It's like there's really no subject that is completely off limits for me. I love to have those deep, meaningful conversations, especially about the things that other people aren't willing to talk about, because it's so important to bring these things up and have real conversations. Why? Because when you don't talk about these things, you struggle in silence by yourself. You think you're the only one who is dealing with this, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. More often than not, a lot of people are struggling with that thing, and you think nothing of it because you don't see them talking about it. They're too embarrassed or too ashamed to say something. It doesn't mean people aren't struggling. Like, sometimes relationships they look all shiny on the surface, but behind closed doors, it's another story.
Yeah, and I think the people you associate with also makes a big difference as well, because when I was married, a lot of my mates were still single, so I kind of lost touch with them. And then when we separated, it's like, well, they're still single, but they don't get what I'm going through with the divorce. And then all of a sudden, all of these people that you don't know that are also divorced or going through it suddenly pop out of the woodwork somewhere, and you're not alone. But there's still a lot of stigma around divorce.
Man, I know that because I have been divorced twice. And first marriage, I really felt the weight of that shame. The second time it came around, the weight was still there. Honestly, there was no other alternative for me in the second relationship. My first husband came out. We were just about a year into our marriage, about 6 or 7 years into our relationship. Told me that we were like Will and Grace. And for anybody who does not know the show Will and Grace, because this is 20 years ago, our roommates, Will and Grace, and Will is gay. So imagine my surprise, and I was like, hold on a minute, because this character, Will, is gay. And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. Right. Okay. So ultimately, I left that relationship. Obviously, there was really no chance at reconciling in that case. It wasn't a marriage breakdown per se. We actually had a pretty kind and generous, friendly relationship. It just, I guess, wasn't authentic, and it wasn't anybody's fault, because I actually do believe he was a very good person, and he just wasn't being authentic with himself. Right? There's a lot of religious reasons for keeping that quiet. He was raised in a Catholic family. All these kind of things contributed. End of the day, I think it did teach me something about authenticity, which took me a while to circle back to, because after that, did not go on a great journey. Went through a couple of relationships that were not good. Kind of swung the other way on the pendulum. Went the ultra masculine man. That did not work out either. He cared more about football than spending time with me going forward. My second marriage seemed, I will admit, looking back now, felt the pressure of approaching 30 and being unmarried and wanting to have children. That is societal programming and conditioning. Yet I wanted those things for myself, and I felt the clock ticking, right? So maybe, probably, there were things that I brushed to the side, tolerated, in an effort to reach that desired outcome. Probably living in a little bit of a potentiality world instead of a reality. And We'll do that from time to time, right? If things are not great, we can always daydream and imagine the potential, right? Look at the potential in someone. And I'm very good at that, which actually serves me really well as a mentor, right? To see the potential and encourage people and help them to get there. We also have to be grounded in reality. And that was a piece that was missing for me. So what resulted from that was what I call suffering from just a momitis, which meant I didn't know who I was outside of taking care of my children, my household, being a wife. I felt anxious and overwhelmed before my feet hit the floor in the morning. Found myself doing all kinds of things as coping mechanisms like shopping, drinking, Flix binging, those kinds of things. I actually took up the sport of long distance running just in an attempt to run away from it all. Ironically, discovered I couldn't run away from the one person that I was actually trying to run away from, which was this girl right here. I eventually had this sort of holy shit moment where I realized the common denominator, like literally in every one of my problems there. While a lot of people might sort of come to this conclusion, they may also put themselves back into it because it's a tough pill to swallow. And there can be a lot of guilt and shame associated with that. Thankfully, I did not go down that route. Instead, I went down the route of, if I'm the common denominator, I can also be the common solution. And so I started to look at doing things differently. I decided that is the key piece there. I chose myself doing something differently to create a different outcome. We all know the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. That's what I was doing until that point. I had spent years complaining, blaming, finger pointing, wishing, hoping, wanting, dreaming. None of it was working. And so when when the rubber meets the road, you've got to choose to do something differently. And so I chose to start looking at myself, to start loving myself, to start a better understanding of who I was, not just a mom. One's just anything. We're so much more than that. And it led me down a path of self-discovery, which really brought me here at the end of the day. But it is not an easy journey. It's well worth it, right?
It certainly is. And I hear so much synergy between your journey and mine, apart from the just a mum bit and the and that biological clock ticking. But I do think that's a challenge for a lot of women who focus on their career for so many years. That clock starts ticking. You get these messages internally saying you need to do this, and you end up in the wrong relationship for the wrong reasons.
And I didn't know who I was. So that's a huge part of a problem. And I think that's a large missing link for people. When you don't know who you are, it's very hard to figure out what you want to create. When even the best situation that would be perfect and ideal for you slaps you in the face, if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, you might miss it. So it's so important to build this foundational relationship with yourself so that you know where you end and where other people begin, so that you can figure out what it is that you want to create, both for and within yourself and in relationship to everything else in the world, because everything ultimately is a relationship. You have a relationship with food, with money, with, your neighbor down the street, not just your kids and your spouse, not just your in-laws, right? Everything's in relationship. So ultimately, I do see people talk a lot about, well, if your relationship isn't good, then maybe that's the cause of your unhappiness. And I would purport it's the other way around. If you're not happy within yourself, that will reflect into your outer world, into those external relationships, as within, so without. And so that is a different take than a lot of people in talk about relationships, but I'm here to shake things up. So you and I likely agree on that, but
absolutely. When I start working with a new client, one of the sessions I have quite early on comes from this one question which I had to ask myself, where I looked in the mirror and said, okay, who the fuck are you? And you start off with, oh, I'm Alan, but who is Alan? I am this body. Okay, so if this body dies, but then my spirit goes on to wherever it goes, I'm not dead. So I'm not this body. So who am I? oh, I am my career, my job, and all these different things. I'm a dad, and you put all these things to one side. It's like, who am I? And I am just a spiritual being having a human experience. And it's like, okay, so what
It takes
I
the
want this
pressure off.
experience to be like.
Yeah, it really takes the pressure off. And there was so many labels that we put on ourselves, and labels are limiting. I don't love labels. I don't even really like saying that I'm a mentor or a coach. Or, like it feels very limiting. Not only that, but language is an interesting beast, because not only can we communicate one thing, but the way people interpret it may be entirely different than our intended communication. So it's an interesting thing, this language. I come to the root of who, like, I have a video about this on my website, actually. It's like, who the fuck am I? I'm all of these things. I'm a mother, I'm a partner, I'm a mentor, an author, a podcaster. I could go on. If we strip away all of those labels, what are we left with? And I come to the conclusion that at the root of it all, I am love. I'm pure, unconditional love in a human meat suit to create whatever fucking experiences light me up. And that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not here to should on myself and do what everyone else tells me I am supposed to do. Maybe some people do that. That's fine. If that's your journey, if you would like to be a rule follower, there's lots of rule followers out there. That's just not me. I like to break the rules. I think they're all made up anyway. And so, I'm here to shake things up, and things aren't working in a different way. What I've really discovered is that most of the times, all the stuff that we've been told and conditioned and programmed to do is actually all in an effort of keeping us stuck. It's not actually moving us towards higher consciousness or higher awareness or happiness or love or peace or joy. And that your intended, your natural state of being, all of the other stuff is actually an illusion, a very compelling illusion, right? Idea that we're going to chase that happiness, we're going to find the love, we're going to have that 2.5 kids in the white picket fence. Thinking that if we just do or have these things, that it will create happiness for us. Happiness is an inside job. So that's why that doesn't work. And if it ever feels like it's working and then it's ripped out from under you, because it was just temporary. It was an illusion of happiness, right?
And then you meet somebody who's got that car and that relationship and that picket fence, or you think they have, and you get to know them and you find out that the bank owns most of that stuff. Yeah. They don't see their partner and they're blooming miserable. And you wonder why.
If you really, here's like the crux of it is, if you can't create happiness right now, a lot of people are waiting, right? They're waiting around for the next whatever they think it is that's going to make them happy. That's a waste of time and energy, because that's not how that works. If you can't create happiness now within yourself, it will forever elude you. That's how it works, my friends. You want to create change, you feel it first. Then you take action from that space, right? If you want to be a peaceful person, God, don't wait for the world to be at peace before you decide to be a peaceful person. Choose to be a peaceful person first. Seek it out in whatever way feels peaceful to you. Create that experience for and within yourself. And then you'll see that will ripple out. And those other things won't bother you, right? It's an internal action that ripples out into your perception of reality. And because we are creating our interpretation of reality, yes, there's a reality out there, but nobody really probably can say for sure what the actual truth of it is, because every single person involved in it is putting it through their own filter, how they're interpreting it, how they are experiencing it. And so if you put on a lens of love or peace, and you will experience your reality through a lens of love and peace. That's you choosing to show up and choose that. A lot of people don't choose, right? They go through life on autopilot. They're just letting life choose for them, and they're letting their past programming, their conditioning, their past experiences, their trauma automatically drive the bus. Then they feel like they don't have any choice. They don't have any real power. I've been there, and this is why I can share this. It feels like you're just going through the motions. You don't have any control. You don't have any hope. You don't have any input. It's just happening, like life's happening to you. That's a really unfortunate way to live in that survival mode, just barely getting by, because you're not meant to live that way.
Yeah. So can you speak to that person who is listening to this and think, yeah, this all sounds great. I'd love to feel what it feels like to be that unconditional love or receive it or whatever it may be. But I don't know what it feels like because I've never felt it. How can I feel it?
My favorite tool for feeling this is probably, most people would refer to it as meditation. It's ultimately going inward and getting to know ourselves and just being within ourselves. And I think that we all have a sense of what love is inside of ourselves. The problem is that we are expecting and looking for it from external sources, and that's not really where that comes from. So ultimately, it's a matter of tapping in to you on the inside, to your essence, to your energy, to the divine creator being that you are, living this human existence, right? Your soul, if your spirit, whatever you want to call it. Really just tapping into yourself. This is really hard to do. We haven't been taught to do this. We've been taught to follow the rules and, the things that we're supposed to do. We don't stop. Barely have time. Where most humanity is rushing from one thing to another. We're distracted on our devices. We're literally not taking even a moment to sit with ourselves and just be. Yet, this just being is how we can start to see the power that we have within ourselves. The truth is, you probably don't even have a relationship problem. You probably have an identity problem. That's really what it boils down to. You don't know who the fuck you are. And who you are is, like I said, you're just like me, pure love. You are already whole. You're not broken. You don't need fixing. You don't need to be on an endless healing journey to become someone else in order to experience the things that you want to experience. You need to come back into yourself, recognize your wholeness. And the beautiful thing is, we set aside the endless healing journey or the self-improvement journey that so many people are on. And let's be honest, this is almost like a marketing gimmick to get people to continue to buy and buy and buy because they're never going to be fixed. We're never broken, right? So it's an endless journey to get somewhere where you never had to go. You're already there is the whole thing. But it keeps you trapped in the illusion that there's somewhere else that you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be become someone else. Truth is, if you can master just being your whole self, that's when the magic happens. And you don't have to become someone else. You don't have to be on an endless healing whole. Yeah, you're going to continue to grow and evolve because that's what humans do. That's what all of nature does, right? We can't sit still. That's not possible. We will continue to grow and evolve and, become different versions of ourselves as we move through life, but not out of a need of changing who we were, or out of a space of accepting who we are.
Yeah. And growing from that place of inside out. And I think so much of what I do as a coach, in a sense, is almost like picking up a metaphorical mirror and putting it in front of the client and saying, all these gaps around you are there. But it's like Les Brown says, when you're in the picture, you can't see the frame.
We literally can't see ourselves without a mirror. And that's literal and also very metaphorical because we really can't see our full selves. Too close to it. And also our brain has these amazing functions to keep us safe and alive that tend to keep us from thriving to our fullest extent if we're not very intentional about working with them, right? If we're living in survival mode, we don't see that we have those options. We don't see that we have those, kind of superpowers at our fingertips. Just feel stuck. And the thing about stuck even is it's not a bad thing. People often think like, oh, I'm so stuck and it's like such a bad place to be in and like, I don't want to be here. It's actually a very exciting place to be because if you are feeling that, you are just, what it really means is you're feeling the distance between where you are now and where you're, where you'd like to be, I guess, at the end of the day. And you're feeling the incongruence between your current state and your desired state. And so ultimately, it's a call. It's an invitation for you to step outside the comfort zone, Get off of autopilot, auto survival mode, and into truly thriving, to answer the call to whatever great life is awaiting you, because that's what you're meant for, right? You are here to create all of the experiences that you dream of. You deserve them. You are so worthy of them. You don't have to do anything to prove yourself. You just get to choose it and create it for yourself. That's a really tricky thing because people don't believe that. I know I didn't believe that. And people, well, just choose it for yourself. What the fuck does that mean? Choose it for myself. I don't have any choices. I'm stuck in this shitty relationship. Watching these other bullshit people faking how lovey-dovey they are. And I don't see it, to interrupt that pattern. Because what we focus our energy and our thoughts on is what we create our reality with, right? That's the filter. That's the lens through which we're viewing it. And if we're viewing experience through a lens of, I can't, I'm not worthy, it's no hope for me, it's dreary. It's not true. So what we're going to do is, shift those viewpoints, those lenses, so that we can invite in what we want. Because the truth is, you don't have to do something to become worthy of it. Worthy of it because you want it. That's it. And so when you can really ingrain that, I know that's maybe easier said than done. We start with just interrupting the unhelpful thoughts, getting curious. Is that serving me to think that way, to not believe this is possible? Is that helpful? I just told you it wasn't. So hopefully, right? Hopefully we know this now, that some of those thoughts that are making us feel crummy in our experience, they're not true, not helpful. So how can we shift that? And it's baby steps. It's one step at a time. We're just intentional about how we're showing up in the choices that we're making. And the more you do this, the more you create space. And I love meditation for creating space. And it literally can create just even mere moments to start with. And that's enough. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to actually sit still 4 hours or anything like that. And giving yourself 5 minutes is an opportunity to get to know yourself within, to reconnect, to discover what's there for you. And that will help you immensely as you go about life and interacting with other people and other experiences. It just gives you a chance to pause and then choose how you want to respond versus that autopilot reaction response, which will recognize if you've ever blown up about something silly or had a big emotional outburst to something that triggered something that was actually from your past. And a lot of people know about triggers, so I throw that word out there, but I actually see them activations. Because a trigger is almost like putting the responsibility off of me and onto the source of the emotional outburst. An activation empowers me. This is actually something that's being brought to my awareness. This means I'm ready to look at it and see what is there for me to I'm aware about, to be consciously choosing to reflect on. And that's where we get to start making our choices, right? When we start to see, this is self-awareness, we can see some options ahead of us that maybe we couldn't see before.
I wonder how many people like myself used to hear the phrase time and time again as a child, I want doesn't get.
Yet
here we are.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff we've been taught, programmed, conditioned to believe is true that is absolutely not true and is absolutely not helpful. It's very disempowering, to be taught that just because you want it doesn't mean you can have it. How is that empowering? It doesn't mean that you get to just sit there and want it and it will appear. That's not how that works either. People talk about manifesting. It's not just like you have a dream about it and it's going to happen. You
have to take the steps along the way.
Right? You still have to show up, and essentially what you need to do is be the person who has that thing. So you don't just dream from the couch that you're going to have a 6-pack. That's not going to work. You need to be the person who has a 6-pack. You need to be the person who's in the gym, working their abs, working their full body, because we all know that, you can't just work one dirty body and have a 6-pack. And you need to be that person in the kitchen very consistently. Personally, since I'm a personal trainer, I know exactly what it would take to have that sort of figure, and I'm personally not committed to that in any way, shape, or form.
Me neither.
Like food. So there we have it. You can't just wish it and hope it. sit back and wait for it. That's probably more what they might have meant, but it's interesting how the words actually carry so much more power. That's why they say it's spelling, right? Our words have that much meaning. They do actually make a difference in our experience. And that particular instance maybe had a maybe a slight different meaning, or maybe it was intended slightly differently, but those words have a lot of power and they weren't true.
Yeah, it's interesting how language changes with time as well.
Yeah.
Take the word shit, for example. It's actually an acronym for store high in transit. It's like there's used to carry manure on canal boats and things, but because it's smelt, they say put it up there. So store high in transit.
Yeah.
Everyone
so
gets
funny.
offended by the word. It's bad.
Well, it's interesting because people do get offended, and I read a very interesting book, and I cannot fortunately remember the exact title of the book, but it was about swearing. And it was a very interesting book because it talked about how swearing is essentially using the taboo words. Effectively, it works as a form of emotional release, right? That's why we swear when we stub our toe. It helps us to diffuse the emotional buildup. So it's interesting. Any words that generally are related to, excretion, sex, and religion are typically in that category of taboo, inappropriate curse words, if you will, which that's a whole nother word. Anyways, it's interesting for sure observing language. And I just wanted to say from this book, because I thought it was fascinating, that there were, I think it was orangutans, also picked up the use, not the words, not verbally, but they would pick up and use the signs that they learned from their humans. They would swear in appropriate context as well. And I thought that was just very fascinating. There are some studies that show that people who swear have a slightly higher emotional intelligence. So studies in my favor, I'll take it.
Who
People
am I
say they
to
have
argue
less
with that one?
intelligence. I think that's bullshit. So
Who'd have thought
very
this
fucking intelligent.
conversation would go in that direction?
You never know. You never know where it's going to go with Happiness Hussy.
You could say the same with the love engineer.
See, there you go. It's a match made in heaven.
So what would you say one of the biggest challenges you've had to either help a client overcome or overcome for yourself?
Honestly, I do believe that first thing that comes to mind is just me getting out of my divorce. Like that for me was the biggest thing that I've overcome in this life. I'm so grateful for it. I would never go back and change all of the heartache, all of the challenges, all of the sleepless nights. I would do it all again because it brought me to this place and it shaped who I am today. It gave me wisdom that I can use to help other people. It's interesting because we live in a world where there is just massive amounts of information available, and this applies across all areas. I'm going to throw it back to the health coach thing. Obviously, I was there, so I'm familiar with this. We all know what works if we want to lose weight, right? In a general sense, we generally know that we should move our bodies more and we should be aware of what we're eating, right? What we're putting into our bodies and what we're doing with our bodies to move that. Yet, it's easier to talk about how to do it than it is to do it. So it remains theoretical knowledge, ideas, until we live it, until we do the thing, until we be the person who's doing the thing. We just have ideas. Or maybe dreams, there may be hopes, but they're just ideas, they're thoughts, that's it. They're not reality. And so until we go through it, we just have ideas. And when we go through it, and this is why I would say that I am perfectly equipped to help guide people through their relationship challenges because I have lived it. Which help would you get from someone who's never fucking been there, who's never struggled a day in their relationship, which I'm going to call bullshit on that because I don't know anybody who's never struggled in a relationship. If you are that person, I actually would be very interested to hear from you because I think that struggling is how we learn, right? Making mistakes is how we grow. And so having gone through the toughest of times for myself, and I'll say it was a very dark time. I had dark thoughts during the time of my divorce. And I'm grateful I had my kids. They pulled me through because I couldn't leave them. I was leaving the marriage for them, which paradoxical, because up until the point that I chose myself, I was staying for them. I would have martyred myself forever. Until I realized I was quite set on martyring myself and being the buffer and, trying to keep it together, hold the family together. Nobody wants a broken home. Until I realized that was actually not teaching my kids at all any of the things that I wanted to teach them, right? It was actually teaching them the opposite. It was teaching them how to people please, wear masks, to look it up and be miserable, to keep chasing perfection, but only like for out there, and then it's not the same behind closed doors. And I had this realization that kids didn't need like a family that was together and actually broken on the inside. They just needed me to show up and choose myself so that I could show them how to do the same thing, so that I could show them how to create their happiness, so that by going first, I would model that. Anybody who has kids know that they don't really listen. They're watching, right? They're observing.
Yes.
They're seeing what you're doing. And while it doesn't seem like they're really taking it on board, I guarantee you that what you're modeling to them will be what they will replicate as adults. When that kind of, it landed on me like a big pile of bricks. I realized what I was modeling to them for a relationship was the last thing I wanted them to go through. So that's ultimately one of the catalysts. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't stay in this. I can't let them think this is healthy and normal, because it was not. That's the thing, right? When people don't have good, healthy models, they think that's normal. Parents
they
fuck
don't know
play
any
along,
different.
and dad hits mom when he's drunk, and that's normal. So we paint a different picture. That wasn't my picture. I was being a little bit more dramatic. So nobody come at me with liability or anything. That was just a sample story just there. Okay. So nobody was drunk and nobody was hitting anybody in my story, but certainly in many other people's stories, they were. And that's your normal growing up. You tend to think that's normal for everybody, right? I do know that my kids didn't bat an eye if someone was yelling at their kid in public, and that was concerning to me. That was one of the things I was like, hold on a minute. This is not normal. Ripping your kid a new one for, wanting a treat at the grocery store. It's not normal, right? That's not healthy. And I get it too at the same time. So I have an immense amount of compassion for people who are struggling, because I know what it's like to not have those coping skills, because I was there. And I've certainly yelled at my kids too. I am far from perfect. I never claimed to be. I'm not some guru on a pedestal has it all figured out. I figured myself out. And I actually have a gift to help other people figure themselves out. It's not me giving you the answers. It's me helping you find your answers. That is the magic ticket there.
Absolutely.
My wisdom helps me to do that, because I can now see things through this lens of love, through this lens of peace, joy, happiness, and growth, wholeness, right? It's so much more magical when you can start to see yourself through this. And so if you're not there yet, you're thinking, yeah, right. Just want you to just allow that it could be possible that you're already whole. That's it. You don't have to believe it. Not all the way. Maybe there's a possibility that some of what we're sharing today about you being whole, about you already being perfectly imperfect as a human. I know that's a paradox, but you're uniquely designed. So boring if we were all the same. You have everything that you need to create the exact human experience that you want to create. So instead of fighting against everything that you think you're supposed to be because society told you to fit in that box, to be, a good girl or a good boy. That's a huge thing. I have actually content on my podcast and on my channel about the good girl conditioning. I know boys were conditioned to be a certain way too, right? To sit down and be quiet. We all were. Sit down and be quiet in school. And we've been lost track of who we are. Instead of seeking validation, acceptance, and love from everyone else, we, in that process, end up abandoning ourselves. And guess who's going to be there for you forever? So it's really worthwhile to create a really solid, loving relationship with yourself. And I am assuming at this point that your listeners are hopefully past the point of being so awkward about loving themselves. But in case you aren't, it's okay. All right, we don't all start there. We weren't all taught to love ourselves, right? That can be really awkward. But I do highly recommend just easing into, look yourself in the eyes in the mirror. I love you, love you. I love you. Look deep into your eyeballs. I love you. And start as simple as that. And if it's awkward, yeah, it's probably awkward. Get easier. Anything that's new is awkward, right?
Yeah. I think Mel Robbins that came up with the high five habit. Like give yourself a high five in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an alternative.
Little thing, but very powerful. And I think there's a lot of people where the word love doesn't actually have a positive connection. So how about giving yourself a little bit of compassion or a little bit of care or a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of respect maybe, because
honoring
every
yourself.
Tough day you've got through it.
Honestly, I think self-compassion is the catalyst to loving yourself, right? Because it's just allowing your humanity, because we're all human. None of us have it all figured out. None of us are perfect. And when you just allow yourself the grace to just be who you are, yeah, we've all made mistakes. Literally every one of us. No one has done it all perfect. It's not possible. If you start to just give yourself a little bit of self-compassion, say like, you know what? I did the best that I could with what I had, right? The resources and understanding that I had at the time. It's tricky because when we look back in hindsight with new information, right? So we have new information, new understanding, new resources, and we look back at the version of ourselves that didn't have that and beat ourselves up, right? For making mistakes. What if you applied just a little compassion and say, you know what? I did the best that I could with the resources and understanding that I had at the time. And now I see differently. I can choose differently, right? That's how we learn and evolve and grow and take those lessons, alchemize the shit, right? I like to say, turn your mess into your message is ultimately, alchemizing the experiences and turning them into something powerful, that wisdom, that embodied knowledge that you can impart to the world and also use to direct your life and make it a lot more smooth. So it's a message. The mess is still in there. We're not only erasing it or pretending it didn't happen. We're just doing it for something better.
Yeah, so I actually grew up on a farm, so you can imagine I literally grew up with a lot of bullshit around. And a little metaphor I have from those early days, what do we use that shit for? Natural fertilizer. It's there to make stuff grow. So all those challenges that I've been through and my clients go through, it's just bullshit. It's fertilizer to make you grow. You can either get buried by it, or you can use it for what it's supposed to be used for, as a tool for growth.
Yeah, yep, exactly right. And I think that when you do recognize the love that you have within yourself, because it is literally your essence, and yes, we can get away from it and be sort of buried under the shit, the illusion of life, the pain, the suffering, the negative experiences, the traumas, all of these things, we can be buried under it. Still remain. We are still love underneath all of it. And if we can slowly come back to ourselves, we will start to see those things fall away. It's the process of unlearning, ultimately, of unlearning who we are not and what we are not, which is not suffering. It's not pain. Those are not part of our natural state. Our intended state of being is one that feels really fucking good for you. Okay, so whatever good feeling feels like to you, happy, peace, joy, love, passion, bliss, whatever words you want to use, the words are not as important as the feeling that you have within yourself that feels really good. That's where you're meant to operate. You can get there. It's actually easier than you think. Maybe not easier than you think. Easier than you know. Because you often will think it's really difficult. It's insurmountable. It's so far away. And the truth is, that's an illusion. It's all right here.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time we're not actually feeling, we're just thinking about feeling.
Thought, feelings. Goodness, that's where that spiral comes from, right? We have an emotion, which when we have an emotion, It's just information. It's actually very neutral until we assign meaning to it. So we have a feeling. If we just were like, oh, hey, look at that. I'm feeling whatever type of way. I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling frustrated. Okay. If we stopped there, which is what my first book is about, stopping the spiral so that you don't go beyond that, because that's where we run into trouble, that feeling dissipates. It's very short-lived, like less than 90 seconds, sometimes 30 seconds, if you just allow it to be without resisting it. Yet it's uncomfortable. And we've been taught to resist the uncomfortable and try and avoid it. You know, when we're children, somebody told us you're too much, don't be a crybaby, you're not supposed to get angry because you're a girl and you're supposed to be soft and gentle. Boys don't cry, all of this kind of stuff. So we are like, oh my God, no, like I'm not supposed to feel this way. I can't feel this way. We end up clinging to it, which seems very counterintuitive to let ourselves feel it, to let it go, but we have to feel it to heal it. We have to feel it so that it can move through. What happens if we don't? We end up thinking a bunch of stuff. We assign meaning to it. We've got the stories, we've got judgments, we've got more feelings that pile on top of the first one because now we've got all of these thoughts that are making us feel even bigger ways. We don't have to go through that. We can learn to stop that spiral, and we can learn to create upward spirals where we feel really good. It's not about bypassing. It's not about ignoring. It's not about stuffing. It's actually about just being with it, allowing it. And it like passes like it was never there. Emotions are temporary and our thoughts are temporary. We're not either of those things. We're the observer of those things. And so that's how you separate yourself enough from it. I use meditation to create that sort of distance between me and my thoughts or me and my emotions. It's a really helpful tool. Then you can use that strategy throughout your little thing throughout the day in your daily life. If you can get that practice down, if you can bring yourself into the now moment as the observer, demand, and free yourself from all of that unnecessary suffering and just bring yourself back into the now present moment. Okay. To me, right? Back to love.
Yeah.
And be as simple.
I'm not the thought, I'm not the feeling, I'm the one who experiences them.
What a gift to take that identity that you've built around all of those experiences that you've had, all those labels you've added, and strip it away. Be left with who you really are, which is whole, which is unconditional love, which is peace, which is joy, which is happiness. Rediscover how good life really can be.
Absolutely. So on that note, how can anyone who's listening find you or learn more about you?
You can head to my website. Actually, I'm just going to give you my book website since we talked about Love Unstuck at the beginning, and it will hook you up with all of the other things as well, my podcast and my other books. So that website is loveunstuck.com. And if you need some meditative help, I actually have a really fun meditation series on my website. It's a freebie. It's a 5-minute quickie, sweary AF. And yes, they are sweary. They are not your grandma's own shanty own kind of meditations. These are actually designed for people who can't meditate, who struggle to sit still, who don't know how to quiet their mind. Because I'll tell you what I know, if there's people out there thinking that they're not good at meditating, that's all bullshit. Those are stories that you're telling yourself, and it's okay. Nobody's perfect at this. The goal isn't to all of a sudden be like, and like never have another thought again. That's not it. It's just to be able to create space between your thoughts so that you can choose. So if that's of interest, you can find that on my website under my Work With Me page, minute sweary meditations. And they probably make you laugh, hopefully make you release some emotions, create some space, and just leave you feeling a little bit more lighthearted and at peace. And of course, Love Unstuck, you can find that there on the website as well. And my podcast, Create Your Happy. I have been speaking all season about various relationship topics. Probably know at this point in the conversation that it's going to come back to you. It's always coming back to you. And in a most loving reframe, it's not them, it's you. Sometimes it's them too. But ultimately, you're the only one that you can change. You're the only one that you can shift. So the focus is on the one thing that we can control, which is ourselves. And so if you want a little bit more dive into that, there's a lot of, keep them kind of short, nuggets, little topics that might be of use in helping you relate to other people.
Awesome. So, final question, which I ask everybody. I just don't want them. And that question is, as this podcast is called Relationship Revolutions, if there was one thing that you feel would bring a revolution to the world of dating and relationships, what would that one thing be?
I have so many. Okay, I have to pick one.
First one that comes up.
It's not about what you can get a relationship from another person. And if more people approach relationships from a standpoint of what can I give? And now I want to preface this by saying, I'm not talking about overgiving. Okay. I'm talking about loving relationship that goes two ways. So both people coming to the relationship with this perspective, not just one, right? We run into problems when we're not on the same page. If you both came to a relationship, think, what can I give? What can I contribute? How can I grow this? How can I grow myself as a couple? It would change a lot of things and a lot of relationships for sure.
Yes. Get away from the give and take and just give whilst
Giving is
being
receiving
open
anyways.
to receive.
Giving is receiving. That's another one of those weird paradox things. Like, you want to receive, give first.
Goes back to the old adage to be the change that you want to see.
Absolutely. And be yourself. Really think that authenticity is a missing link, a secret key to creating happy life and happy relationships. If you're showing up as yourself, you're going to find your people who mesh with you. If you're wearing masks, you are going to find people that do not mesh with you, right? And so if you can show up authentically as yourself, you'll be happier. You'll find your people, and you'll be able to create that life legacy, life, love, and legacy, which is how I usually say it. And apparently I'm tongue-tied for the moment. You truly want to create for yourself. So be you.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining me. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. This has been a really fun conversation. I trust that y'all got a nugget out there, and I'd love to hear which one landed for you. So I'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop a comment or whatnot, and Allie can let me know, or you can reach out directly on my website and let me know if there was anything here that landed for you. I'd just love to hear what sticks for people, because we talked about a lot of stuff today.
Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave me a review on your preferred podcast platform. Click the like button and also subscribe so that you get the new episode notifications. I'm curious, what did you take away from this episode? Please share your takeaways with me. Send me an email to relationship-revolutions@theloveengineer.rocks.